Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, stephanies.leabharlann. I'm Stephanie. And welcome to my mid-year book Freakout tag for this year. So I've done this once before on my channel. I think I missed out on doing it last year. I don't know why, but I do know that I've only done it once before, but I'm so excited to get into this. We have 13 questions to answer and I have so many good books to talk about. First question is, what's the best book you've read so far this year? Now, I haven't mentioned this book on my channel yet. However, if you have been even watching any videos on Book Talk or Bookstagram or BookTube at all, you will know about this book and you will know the hype surrounding it. So I originally read it on my Kindle and then I had to buy a physical copy like literally the day after I finished it because it was so good. That book is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Oh my god, this is so shiny. I don't even know how to start talking about this book, to be honest. So like I said, I picked it up on my Kindle and obviously I rated this 5 stars, like duh. I picked it up on my Kindle and I had seen it floating around. It wasn't exactly really hyped yet, but the hype was starting. And I decided to just pick it up because I wanted a new fantasy book. This book is about our main character, Violet, who has trained her whole life to be a scribe, which is essentially one of the people in this world who accumulate knowledge and work in libraries, stuff like that. And she's trained her whole life to be a scribe. And then on the day of the tests, essentially, to get in which sort of area of work you're going to be in, her mother, who is actually the general, a high up general in the writer's quadrant, actually tells her that no, you're going to become a writer. Never mind the library business, you're not doing that anymore. You are doing the most deadly job there is. So Violet has to take on a bunch of these trials and essentially start her time in the school of the writer's quadrant. So she's essentially risking her life every single day. It's really dangerous, really high stakes. And when she's there, she meets this man called Zayden, and he is essentially one of her already established rivals because of who their families are. And it's just so good that there's dragons in this. Did I mention that? The writer's quadrant, they're riding dragons. There is dragons in this. It's wonderful. It's amazing. There's so much in it that I can talk about for days, but also probably can't, considering I just gave such an abysmal explanation of what this book is, but it's incredible. And if you haven't heard about it already, honestly, I'm sure there's other people out there who can explain it in better words than I can, but it's just so incredible. And the characters, so good. The romance, top tier. The dragons are the most magnificent creatures ever. I just love dragons. Like, I just love dragons so much. Like, oh my god, it's incredible. And also just the politics in this and the actual world building. The world is so interesting. This book is so good. It's so good. The second question is, what's the best sequel you have read so far this year? This was caught in between two for me, but I eventually chose the second book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is called Killer Instinct. And I read I think I read the first 3 or else the first 4 books in the Natural series on my Kindle in the span of about a week a while ago, and I loved every single minute of it. They're so good, they're so addictive, and I actually rated the sequel, I think I rated it 5 stars, and I had rated the first book, which is just called The Naturals, I think I rated that like 4.5 stars or something, but the sequel to me was just so incredible. I love sequels to books most of the time because we have the entire world and characters established and I know where I am, and it's just essentially me having so much fun and I love it. And most of the time as well, first books in a series end on a cliffhanger for the sequel and setting it up for the sequel, so it's always so entertaining, and this sequel was no different. Basically, this series follows a bunch of teenagers who have these innate abilities to be very good at being a detective, kind of. A bunch of teenagers, and they work together with the FBI on cold cases because they can see things that the FBI agents cannot, because these innate abilities are things such as, like, there's a profiler, someone who's really good at observing people and profiling people. There is someone who can read emotions really well and extremely accurately. And then there's also someone who is like a walking encyclopedia, and someone who essentially is a human lie detector. And it's just incredible. Not only just are these characters so fascinating, but also I am just a sucker for anything to do with like detective kind of work, and especially things that are working on the psychological part of crime. And just reading all about our main character and the way she sees the world and the way she sees suspects is just, oh, it was wonderful. I loved it so much. It absolutely hit the spot. And I need to keep going with the series. I think I've like either one book or else 2 books left in the series, and it's great. The next question is a new release book that you haven't read yet, but you need to. And for this, I literally have so many, but the biggest is probably the sequel to Fell Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong, which is called Fell Heart's Huntsman. And I'm actually currently rereading Fell Lady Fortune. If you've seen my last reading vlog, you'll know that. And I also did want to add as well in on this question the kind of novella in between the first book and the second book in the Fell Lady Fortune series by Chloe Gong called Last Violent Call. Those 2 books I need to read soon. Like, I don't know how I haven't read them already. It needs to happen. Okay, question 4 is my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And honestly, are we surprised about what I'm about to say? I have to answer with Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which is the second book in the Fourth Wing series. It's apparently supposed to be a 5-book series. I am so excited for that. It comes out in October, I think. I need it. I honestly should pre-order it, but I'm kind of scared of pre-ordering books. I don't know why. Number 5 is my biggest disappointment of the year. It actually was difficult for me to answer this question because I feel like I've read a lot of good books this year. I think I've read a total of about 35 books, which is really good considering my goal is 50 books for the year, so I'm going great with that. This book, I think I gave 3.5 stars, but I just had hyped it up so much in my head, which is why I'm after picking it for this question, as it did feel like it was my biggest disappointment. And that is A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. And I read this on my Kindle and I was so excited for it. And I was really, I just heard that it was this wonderful fantasy book with absolutely great romance. And although I did really like the 2 love interests, the 2 romance plots that were going on, I don't know, this book just kind of fell flat for me. It was a bit of a mess. I felt like it was really chaotic and I wasn't able to follow what was going on. The info dumping was too much for me to follow, and also I just felt like the storyline wasn't exactly going in a cohesive way. I don't really know how to explain it. I also can't even tell you what the book is about. I actually can't even remember. There was some elements of it that I did like, but overall I just expected so much more from it and I was disappointed. Question number 6 is my biggest surprise of the year. So for this one, I chose Summer Sons by Lee Mandello. I read this as my first book of 2023 and we started with a bang because I think I rated this 4.5 or else 5 stars. It was such a good book. So the reason why it was such a surprise for me is because it is a horror / thriller type of book. And if you know me, you know I don't read horror books, but I just loved it. I was so intrigued throughout the whole thing. Basically, we follow our main character whose best friend has just died. And they were supposed to go to college together, and the best friend who died had gone ahead of the other friend, our main character. And so after he passes away, our main character goes down to live where they were supposed to live together and essentially try and find out what happened surrounding the death of his best friend, because he does not believe that he died the way people are telling him he did. And while he's there, we find out a lot more about their backstory and the reason why they're best friends and their history with each other. And it's so good. It's also so creepy, but like in the best way. I've never understood people who like horrors until I read this book, because the creepiness just makes it like so much better. Like, oh, it's just so good. And also the romance in this, very good. Loved it. Yeah, it was such a pleasant surprise and I loved that book. Okay, for question number 7, it is my new favorite author. This actually was a bit difficult for me to answer, but after looking at the books I've read so far this year, I realized that I probably should answer with this, and the author is Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, the reason why I chose her is because I'm after reading, I think, 6 or 7 of her books so far this year, which is crazy because I ended up reading and binging the Inheritance Game series in about a week, and then, like I mentioned, the Natural series in about a week as well. Now, I haven't finished the Natural series, but I have finished the Inheritance Games trilogy. Now, there is another add-on book to that, a spin-off series, I think. I haven't read that book yet though, and I don't know if I will because I wasn't really happy with how the Inheritance Games finished entirely, but we'll talk about that in my wrap up. I had to pick Jennifer Lynn Barnes because those books were just so easy to read, so engaging, so interesting. I loved like all of it, and I only had a few little minor things that I didn't like, and I think I rated most of those books from the Inheritance Game series and from the Natural series 4 stars or above. So honestly, she's a queen, absolutely slayed. I knew that the Inheritance Games had a lot of people who were fans of it, and I don't know why I hadn't picked it up, but I'm so glad I did because it was great. Okay, the next question is my newest fictional crush. I have a few that I'm going to mention here. I was originally only going to say one, but then I was like, do you know what? No, why would I stop there? So first, we're obviously going to have to talk about the elephant in the room. Xaden Rierson from Fourth Wing. I need to say more? I don't think I do. He is just, he like oozes attractiveness, and he's just so slay. Like, I need this man biblically, as the TikTok sound says. I love him. Another character worth mentioning is Orion Hong from Foul Lady Fortune. I don't have the dust jacket on this right now because I've been reading it, but Orion Hong, like, oh my god, I just love him. He's like a sweet little cinnamon roll that can also kill you, but he's like, oh, I just love that man. I love him. Like, beloved, please call me your beloved. Thank you very much. And I do have to mention, because I was like, okay, I have, straight away what came into my head was male fictional crushes. But hold on now. We have plenty of female fictional crushes. Well, I say I have plenty of female fictional crushes. So I had to mention this one. I mentioned this in my vlog for this book, but she needs to be addressed here. Anna Lightwood from Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, or the Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare. I'm getting tongue-tied. I'm so overwhelmed talking about this character. Anna Lightwood. If Xaden oozed sexiness, Anna Lightwood oozes sexiness. This woman has me enthralled. No words. I am so obsessed with this woman, and she has spoken all of like 10 times in the first book, and I've only read the first book, so I don't know what else to tell you, but I'm in love with her, and I cannot wait for her to slay in the rest of the series. I really need to read it. Next question is my newest favorite character. This took me a while to find because I've had so many books that I've read that I've loved this year. It was hard for me to pick one, but I had to pick this character, and I think I mentioned this book as well in my past few videos. Honestly, it's a running theme, but that character is Ren from The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. I love unhinged women. That's all I have to say. Like, I just love unhinged women. Ren is an icon, a legend. We love her. I love how feral she is, and I love how much rage she holds, and I love that she does not hold back with that rage. And it's just so incredible. I love her. I love everything about her. I love everything she does. I cannot wait to read about her again in the sequel to this series because, like, oh my god, I just love her. Like, she's incredible. I think I mentioned this book in one of my videos, so if you want to know more about it, if you don't already, I probably spoke about it in that, because I'm not going to talk about it for too long right now because I will just keep going. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. I don't think anyone is going to be surprised about the answer to this question. Now, I will preface and say I cry at practically every single book I read. Like, most of the time a tear will fall from some sort of thing that has impacted me. And a lot of the time I do sob when I read my books. So it wasn't like I didn't have a lot of choice for this question, but I picked this book because this is the one that definitely just, took a piece of my soul. And I definitely sobbed all caps when I read this. So are we surprised? It's Grey Warren, the last book in the Dreamer trilogy by Maggie Stiefvater. I don't think I need to talk about this much because if you've watched my videos, you'll know how obsessed I am with Maggie Stiefvater and the Dreamer trilogy and the Raven cycle. I just could not comprehend that this was the end of an era for me and the end of the Raven cycle world. And it really broke my heart, but also mended it. And it was just tears of joy and tears of sadness. So many tears in this little book. It was just a sob fest. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy. This was actually really difficult for me to answer. Now, I have mentioned some books that have made me happy on this list already, so obviously I didn't want to repeat those. I don't even know how to answer this question because all the books I read, most of the books I read are so depressing and just traumatizing, But I love that, so I don't know. But I picked this one because I was like, well, one, it's a romance. Typically when I read romances, they make me happy. And I was kind of just answering this question not exactly with the word happy, but with giddy, excitedness, if that makes sense. So the book I chose, The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I know practically everyone and their mother has read this book, but I hadn't read it yet, and I'm so glad that I did pick it up because it was so much fun. Oh, the chemistry was just off the charts. Loved them. And it did make me happy because I was just squealing every 2 seconds about how amazing the chemistry was in between these two characters. Now, I will say I watched the movie and I was not impressed. I know that we shouldn't expect a lot from adaptations. I don't know what the consensus is around this movie and if people liked it or not because, like I said, I only just read this book, so I wasn't aware of the hype around the movie and what people's decisions were about it. But for me, it just kind of fell flat. I really loved the person who played our main character, Lucy, but the man for, what's his name even? Something with a J? Girl, I don't remember. Oh yeah, Joshua. That's his name, Joshua. The lad who played Joshua, he gave me the ick. 5 minutes into the movie, I got the ick. So I don't know if that's a me problem, but I just think that the movie wasn't really great. And I'm going to stop talking about it now because this is just essentially me hating on the movie for The Hating Game. But I love the book. The next question is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. I have bought a good few books this year, but this book obviously had to take the top spot for this question because it is just stunning. And that is my copy of Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. I already mentioned the first book in this series earlier, and can we just take a minute? Now, obviously the covers are just gorgeous. This has been already established. We know this. This book came out a while ago now, I think. I think the thing that makes this even better is the fact that I don't know why. I ordered it off Amazon, but for some reason, the edition they had doesn't have a dust jacket for the hard copy, and I love that. I am so obsessed with this. I kind of wish all books were made like this in these editions for hardbacks. I just think they're so stunning. Now, I do love when there's art underneath the dust jacket and embossed on the cover, but I just think this is stunning. Who doesn't want a book that has an actual cover when you're reading it? Because I always take off my dust jackets, so my books just look boring, like Fat Lady Fortune, when I read them. So I love this one. It's just fabulous. It's absolutely stunning. The last question for this mid-year book freakout tag is, what are the books that you need to read by the end of the year? I have so many that I could talk about, but I whittled it down to, I think, 4 or 5 books. So most of these I have seen around. Some of them are sequels that I just need to get to. But the first one is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I've seen this around TikTok so much. I'm not really sure what this book is about. I just know that they write letters to each other or something, the two love interests, and that it's some sort of fantasy world. it's quite a short book, I think. Like, well, I don't think it's a short book, but it's not a longer fantasy book. And I also do know that the ending makes everyone want to read the next book, and the next book doesn't come out until later on this year, I think. So very, very, very excited about that. I need to get my hands on it straight away and just devour it. The next book that I definitely need to read before the end of this year is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Now, this might be a bit hypocritical of me to say. So I don't know if you've seen some of my older vlogs, but I think around last year I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I still have it on my shelves. I was going to get rid of it and unhaul it, but I actually didn't, and I'm glad I didn't, because originally when I read it, I did not like it. I liked the premise and I liked certain characters, but I just felt like the whole thing made me really confused and I was just really lost throughout it. But I think that I should reread it and see how I feel about it now, because I feel like when I read it for the first time, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of many different books, and I was kind of only starting to get back into reading again. And it was when towards the start of when I started my booktube channel, so I was only starting to find all these favorites and figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. So I think that it's about time for me to give that another chance. I think it might have possibility for redemption. However, I do definitely want to read the sequel, Hellbent, which has the ugliest cover, I have to say. Like, I love a good gruesome cover. I don't know, because I do like it, but I'm also kind of like, whoa, I feel sick looking at it. You know what I mean? The next book I have to get to, and I've been meaning to pick up for so long, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. The reason why I haven't picked it up so far is because, one, I read The Poppy War. I can't remember when I mentioned it on my channel, but I did mention that I did not like it, and I rated it quite low. But I also think I need to give that series another chance. Honestly, it's kind of just peer pressure from everyone who loves the book, and I'm just kind of like, oh, maybe I just like read it at the wrong time or something. But I do think I need to give that series another chance. Also, the other reason why I haven't picked up Babel yet is because it's really intimidating. Like, I'm kind of scared, because the reason why I didn't really like The Poppy War was because I just felt so confused for a lot of it. And I think that's a me problem. Like, I'm just not a big brain book girly, and it takes a lot of energy for me to read those books. Now, sometimes I can read them and I'm grand, but it takes effort, and a lot of the time I need something to keep me going. So whether that's like a main character that I'm obsessed with, which was Rin, I was really obsessed with the main character in The Poppy War, or like a romance subplot, even if it's really minor, sometimes that helps me get through it. And I know that I'll appreciate it at the end, but it's just getting through it that's the problem for me. So that's why I'm a bit worried about Babel, because I've heard that there's like no romance in it, that it's supposed to be an incredible book, but that there is no romance in it, and that's not what the book is about, which fair enough, I totally understand that, and I'm still excited about the book, but I'm just a bit worried because it's a bit intimidating. Like, it's big, it's a big book, and it's about, you know, R.F. Kuang is a woman who knows what she's talking about. She is educated. So the stuff she writes about and the way she writes it is to a high standard. And sometimes I cannot comprehend big words. The last book that I absolutely need to get to, and I need to buy physical copies of the first and second book, and I think there could be a third book coming out soon, but that is The Atlas Paradox, which is the second book in the series, or else the sequel to anyway, The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I read The Atlas 6 a while ago and I absolutely loved it. I had originally picked it up and then DNF'd it, and then picked it up again because my bestie M, Perfect Paperbacks, told me to keep reading, and I loved it, and I'm so glad I picked up again. So I definitely need to get to the sequel, and I've just heard so much about it, and I just need to get it. I just need to get it. I have so many books that I want to read, and so many other books that I haven't mentioned on this list that I loved. Like, I don't have enough time to read all the books I want to read. It will be my downfall. I'm so excited for the rest of the books that I'm going to read this year. I've had such a good reading year so far already, and I've read so many incredible books. I'm so excited to read so many more incredible books. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!